and welcome to the Build and Exit podcast. I'm Julie Wilkinson and I'm the owner and founder of Wilkinson Accounting Solutions. We specialise in business acquisitions and exit planning, and we started the podcast to give top tips and guidance to people who are looking to sell their business or people who are looking to grow by acquisition. So I'm really excited today to have Steve Brogan as our next guest. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Julie.
Steve has been running his own entity for about 15 years and is the owner and founder of Ascot Group, which he's been part of for 3.5 years. And through that entity has transacted in acquisition. So I'm really excited to have you, Steve. I think you're going to give great tips for our listeners today. So first of all, let me hand over to you to give a little bit of a background about yourself.
Okay, so Steve Brogan, I left corporate 15 years ago to set my own business up, a drinks wholesale group called Drinks 21 Group. About 10 years later, I wanted to get back to a passion of mine and something that I'd done professionally before, which is mergers and acquisitions, and co-founded Ascot Capital with Steve Pratt. 3.5 years later, we've bought 5 businesses. We have well over 100 staff and a thriving group, but that has come with some very interesting learnings and challenges that we've come across along the way.
Oh, yeah, so with that, I think a key topic we're going to talk about today is team structures, because I know you've mentioned to me before about some of the acquisitions you've taken on have had good management teams in place, and others maybe didn't have quite as good. So it's something I see quite a lot in acquisitions when we work with people is, you know, who are the teams going to run the business? Because like we always say, investors want to buy an asset, they don't want to buy a job. So I suppose if they're looking at businesses, how are these people in their due diligence process going to work out, do we think it's got a good team structure and what money might they need afterwards? So let's start with good. So I know you've said that you've bought a couple of businesses that you think did have a good team structure. What do you think made up that foundation?
I think on the best experience we've had is where the vendor or the principal shareholder, created a structure where he was already relatively hands off in the business. Yes, he controlled the finances to a degree and the investments, but the day-to-day management was already delegated to a really capable person. That person had some equity in the business as well, so was very motivated. And so when we came to take over, effectively we stood in the majority shareholder's shoes, and there was very little or no uplift for the staff. The minority general manager was very motivated to come as part of our group. We made sure that he got the right incentives to stay with us, and he's used the fact that we're a bigger scale player to grow his business and really motivate his staff. So I suspect and I hope that the vendor thinks he's got a good deal. We've got an excellent deal because the business is performing exactly as we thought it was, and I think we've invested nicely behind the staff because we had a very motivated general manager to deliver the plan that we wanted to.
Yeah. And do you think, I don't know if you ever talked to the seller about it, do you think he had planned to exit? So do you think he had set it up like that so it would make an easier exit?
I think that was probably, he was planning for at least a couple of years. I would suggest that with COVID and in the industry that we're in, COVID was a very positive period. So he had a COVID bounce and probably took that opportunity to accelerate his exit. But it was definitely a clear plan on his part to make sure that he wasn't required in the business post sale. And for acquisition vehicles like Ascot Capital, that's probably the better way for us to work. We want to get in there with our own teams and our own people to invest in our asset. And often vendors see change as an undoing of their lifetime work, and that's not what it's about really. We're there to grow the business. So the fact that he was ready to exit and could exit quite cleanly made it a really, really easy acquisition for us.
And as sort of founders and CEOs, I know you've got a few other people as well. Did you have to do much work yourself in that business, or did it actually run well from the day one of acquisition? Whether that be you or someone you put in that you paid on top of the current staff level?
No, I mean, we as directors manage that business directly. Strategic input only. Operational input very, very limited. I think the GM's been motivated by that. We've invested in some quite quick wins around upgrading IT, some cosmetic infrastructure investments, and making sure the retail stores were modernized. But fundamentally, it's been a super investment for us, and very little operational stress. And that's if you're looking for that kind of investment, then make sure that you've got that management team ready to go in there, or already in there, if you're looking for that kind of relatively passive investment.
Yeah. And how often are you reviewing the finances then in that business? Are you doing it sort of weekly or monthly?
So we have a monthly finance review. All the businesses have certain KPIs that they're measured. There's a budget. We have a group FD that obviously sets those targets and budgets and manages the financial reporting side. And then we sit with this GM on a monthly basis. Subsequently now we have a group MD in place, so he reports to her, and so our role as founders is even more hands off than it was. So we're obviously monitoring it, but we're trusting the right guy to run the business and do a great job and continue the growth that he's already put in there for us.
Yeah. So that sounds really good. So then if we flip it and look at one that you've bought that maybe didn't have as good team structure in place, what do you think the differences have been?
I think you could probably list two or three. Is the vendor really ready to sell, or does the vendor still want to play an active role? And if they do want to play an active role, how receptive are they to change? Because if we're building a group, we're trying to harmonise processes, policies, procedures, strategy, culture. If you're buying up a number of businesses in the same field, clearly they're going to have different cultures, and in order to achieve those objectives, you've got to get behind one vision. And so, is that vendor who is staying in prepared to buy into the new vision genuinely, and potentially have to compromise on some of the things that in the past they wanted to do, but they've sold their business so they can no longer do it. And invariably, my experience is that's quite challenging for vendors. They don't like to see somebody else coming in and changing the light bulb, so to speak. And that in that way that can upset morale with staff when they see that an owner is no longer happy despite selling their business. And so we've had experience where an owner was particularly unhappy, wanted to leave. We allowed him to leave, but still wanted to talk to the staff and would write to us periodically saying, I think you should be doing this. But he sold his business. So in that regard, I think it's important that you're very clear what your expectations are of that vendor and going into the negotiation, not at the end. So if you want to run the business in your own way and you don't want any input from the vendor, then I think it's important that you're clear from the get-go that that there is a very quick exit for that person.
And so in that scenario, then this is more where the owner is still quite heavily involved in the day-to-day pre-sale, more than like the scenario where the general manager is already running it.
Yeah, they were running the business. They were the glue that held a lot of that business together in some regards. And although they wanted to leave because they didn't feel like they could contribute to the new group, when they did leave, there wasn't the management structure in place that we talked about earlier to pick up the slack. So performance, dipped in the short term, and staff were still heavily influenced by that vendor in the background. So
Yeah.
it became a combination where in the end we've had to change all the management in that particular business because no one could move on.
So you still managed to do it, but I'm presuming you've had to have a bit more investment in it because you've had to replace and maybe more recruitment fees
But the
and
management
things.
time in resolving that for the myself and the other shareholders has been significant. Return on that investment therefore lower, slowed us down in terms of further acquisitions, but at the same time, learned some lessons in terms of not every acquisition is the same, and if you've got if you as a buyer have got a particular goal in mind, how you plan your people needs to be a key part of that due diligence.
Yeah. So if someone is looking to buy and they're trying to identify as part of the due diligence process, how active is the owner operator? What, is there a key question that you think they could delve into to try and get that information?
I think with SMEs, even just looking, let's walk through the org chart. Let's walk through your key people. At some point, the key people need to be aware that there's a sale. It's very difficult to do this all clandestine. And you would interview as part of your due diligence, the 2 or 3 key people that are going to run that business, I suspect. And where we've done that, it's worked really well. And in the example where we didn't, because it was a sale that was done through COVID, because we expected perhaps optimistically the vendor to stay longer, it didn't work out for us so well. So a deal is not just about the balance sheet, the P&L, the deal structure. Make it a bit more three-dimensional and get underneath, particularly when you're buying family businesses that have been run for a generation, potentially by one person or a family. Understanding that culture, understanding is there any key people that can be promoted or already actively in a senior management position that can be embraced in the new post-sale team. I think is critical.
Yeah. Yeah, because my last podcast I had Rachel Collar who owns House of HR. And we were talking about people there and the contract side of things, because I see so many acquisitions where either the seller has promoted the guy that's been there 15 years, which is great because they're committed to the business, but sometimes it's, do those people have the skills to run it? And also often they haven't then got the right contracts in place and the law legislation being followed, so then when the buyers have it, it can cause them problems post acquisition as well, especially when they transfer and 2P and things like that. Do you do HR due diligence as part of your deals?
We do, but it's not at the level that you would want for the scale of business that we are. And so, you're going into a lot of these acquisitions accepting that, what's good for a 5 million business isn't necessarily good for a 30 million pound business. And so you have to accept that there is going to be some work around that area potentially. If I was advising people selling their business, then, getting all your employment contracts up to speed, having clear roles and responsibilities for your staff, even if you have to invest in an HR consultant to get you there, will make that post-sale process a lot easier. I mean, often a lot of these deals involve deferred consideration or earn-out, where the vendor will want to maximise the ongoing profitability of the business. Well, the way that's going to be achieved without the vendor being there is through the people. So invest in getting the team to the best possible point in terms of motivation, in terms of clear goals and responsibilities, and a clear structure chart, so that post-sale, new vendor in, people can carry on doing their job in the way that they were doing it before.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, we help with financial and ops DD. And the reason we do both is, so like one of the questions, I mean, often the seller will always say, oh, I don't do that much in the business. That's what they say a lot of times top level. But when you actually delve into what they do a lot. So like as an example, one of the things we see a lot is who prices project, services or products. And often it ends up being, it's in the seller's head. There isn't a quotation form. So things like that. I mean, if you don't have a actual quotation form that other people can use to price, then the seller is actually having quite a large impact in the business because they're basically the decision on the margins. And so we then think about what impact does that have to financials, because there is, well, will someone quote correctly after acquisition? Because if it's in someone's head, how do you know it's right in the first place? But also who will do it? So you can't always fix everything pre-act, to be honest, because the business you're buying is where it is. You have to make sometimes you have to make the call. But I think it's important to know the potential cash impact of that, and also how long will it take to implement your own strategies. I mean, did you find that in yours? Did it take longer to implement strategies in the one that had a poorer management team than the one that was running more without the vendor after acquisition?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we spent best part of 18 months, making sure that we just had the right people in there, the right structures, the right basic processes. Business contracted quite significantly. So yeah, whereas we've actually done what we should have done in the successful business, which is brought our buying power, our marketing skills to grow that top line. And we've grown double digits in that business year on year in a recession. So, outstanding effort by that team. And we've contracted significantly in the other one because, we've been firefighting on the HR front almost since we bought it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So, well, thanks for your insights, Steve. It's been really interesting. So, I mean, what's the long-term goal for you now? Have you got a future plan for the acquisitions and what you want to achieve personally?
So for Ascot Capital, we've got at least one further acquisition lined up for this year. We've been very, to stay on this theme, we've been very clear with our expectations of the vendor in terms of their role post-deal. And they're happy with that. So everything has been very clear and transparent up front in terms of their role and time that they will stay in the business thereafter. And then we're probably looking to do at least 2 a year for the next couple of years. Our target is we're currently at 12 trade counters in our power tool division called Territory Group. And our target is to get to 25 in the next 2.5 years. And see where this journey takes us from there.
Okay. So are you looking for off-market deals? If anyone needs to contact you, are they best to come through LinkedIn or?
Yeah, so LinkedIn or ascotcapital.co.uk, you've got all our acquisitions on there. You can contact either myself or the co-founder, Steve Pratt. Steve is responsible for the acquisition side of the business. So yeah, if there's off-market deals or people even thinking about selling and potentially just wants a little bit of help, then I'm sure we can give some help to somebody looking to sell or even someone looking to buy if that's what we can do. But definitely looking to keep buying in this space. I think it's potentially very lucrative and it's a great sector to work in. So really enjoying diversing from drinks into the construction industry. It's been good fun.
Oh, good. Well, thanks so much. And thanks to all our listeners. I hope you're enjoying our podcasts. If you really like them, hit the subscribe button or rate and review us at Apple so more listeners can find our show. And I hope to see you again soon.